February 28th, 2026, 1:15 a.m. Eastern Time. American B-2 stealth bombers disappeared from radar screens and reappeared over Tehran moments later, carrying bunker-buster bombs aimed at a compound where Iran's supreme leader had ruled for 37 years. Within hours, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei would be dead, his navy would be burning in the Persian Gulf, and the largest American military operation in the Middle East since the Iraq War would reshape the region forever. But what actually happened in those first 72 hours when American and Israeli forces struck over 1,700 targets? And why did Iran's military, which had prepared for this moment for decades, crumble so fast? A quick note before we begin. Iranian military perspectives in this video are based on analysis of confirmed battlefield outcomes, Iranian military doctrine, and observable facts. Direct testimony from Iranian commanders is limited due to the ongoing nature of the conflict. 1:15 in the morning. President Donald Trump sat in the White House Situation Room watching live video feeds from bombers flying 7,000 miles away. The planes were invisible to Iranian radar. Their pilots could see Tehran glowing below them in the darkness. In a few seconds, they would release their weapons. Trump had made his decision. There was no turning back now. This is the story of Operation Epic Fury. This is the story of how the United States and Israel launched the biggest attack on Iran in history. This is the story of 72 hours that killed a supreme leader, destroyed a navy, and started a war that is still happening right now. For months, tension had been building. Iran was enriching uranium. Intelligence agencies said they were getting close to building a nuclear weapon. President Trump had set a deadline. He told Iran to stop or face consequences. The deadline was February 27th. Iran refused. They said they had every right to nuclear energy. They said America could not tell them what to do. They reminded the world that they had survived 47 years of American pressure since 1979. They believed Trump was bluffing. On January 28th, Trump posted on Truth Social that a massive armada was heading to Iran. He said time was running out. American aircraft carriers moved into position in the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. Thousands of troops deployed to bases in Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, and the United Arab Emirates. Bombers flew from bases as far away as Missouri. 50,000 American military personnel prepared for what was coming. It was the largest buildup in the Middle East in a generation. Iran watched the buildup and prepared their defenses. They had Russian air defense systems. They had thousands of missiles. They had fast attack boats that could swarm American ships. They had spent decades planning for exactly this scenario. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard commanders held meetings in Tehran. They believed their networks of tunnels and bunkers would protect their leaders. They believed their missile forces could strike back hard enough to make America stop. They believed, like they always had, that America feared casualties and would not sustain a long war. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was 86 years old. He had ruled Iran since 1989. He had survived multiple wars, sanctions, and threats. He met with his top commanders on February 27th. They told him the bunker system beneath his compound was too deep for American bombs to reach. The elevator down to the main bunker took more than 5 minutes. The walls were reinforced concrete many feet thick. Intelligence suggested the bunker could survive anything except a direct nuclear strike. Khamenei felt safe. He had survived this long by being careful. He would survive this too. But Khamenei and his commanders made one critical miscalculation. They assumed Trump would follow the pattern of previous American presidents. Limited strikes, a few targets, a warning shot, then negotiations. That was how America had operated for decades. Even when Trump had ordered strikes before, they had been measured and limited. The Iranians prepared for a limited attack. They did not prepare for what was actually coming. At 2 in the morning Eastern Time on February 28th, Trump posted an 8-minute video to Truth Social. There was no address to Congress. There was no press conference. just a video on social media. Trump announced that major combat operations against Iran had begun. He said the United States would destroy Iran's missile forces, annihilate their navy, eliminate their nuclear program, and continue until the threat was gone. He spoke directly to the Iranian people at the end of the video. He said the hour of their freedom was at hand. While Trump was recording that video, the first bombs were already falling. B-2 stealth bombers had taken off from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri 20 hours earlier. They had flown halfway around the world without being detected. They carried massive GBU-57 bunker buster bombs. Each bomb weighed 30,000 pounds. Each bomb could penetrate 200 feet of concrete before exploding. The bombers reached Tehran at sunrise Iranian time. Air raid sirens began to wail across the city. Iranian air defense systems tried to lock onto targets they could not see. Missiles launched into empty sky. The B-2s were already over their targets. The bombs fell. They punched through the earth above Khamenei's compound. They kept going through layers of concrete and steel. Then they exploded deep underground. The blast collapsed the bunker system. Khamenei was in his office when the ceiling came down. His top military commanders were with him. The Iranian defense minister was there. The head of the Revolutionary Guard was there. The secretary of the National Security Council was there. They all died together in the first minutes of Operation Epic Fury. The leader who had ruled for 37 years, who had believed he was safe in his deep bunker, was gone. But the attack had barely started. Across Iran, hundreds of other bombs were falling at the same time. American forces had been watching and waiting for months. Spy satellites tracked every Iranian missile site. Drones circled overhead taking video. Intelligence officers studied where Iranian leaders lived and worked. When the attack began, the Americans knew exactly where to strike. They had mapped every target. They had planned every route. They had calculated every timing. This was not a limited strike. This was total war, delivered in a single devastating blow. And in the first 72 hours, Iran's military would learn what it meant to face the full power of American technology with nowhere to hide. Iranian air defense operators stared at their screens in confusion and terror. One moment, the sky was clear. The next moment, explosions were erupting across Tehran. Where were the planes? The radar showed nothing. Missiles launched blindly into empty air. Operators reported targets that disappeared before weapons could lock on. In air defense bunkers across Iran, commanders screamed into radios asking what was happening. Nobody had answers. At Mehrabad Air Base in Tehran, Iranian fighter pilots ran to their planes. They had orders to intercept the attackers, but when they tried to take off, American F-22 stealth fighters were already overhead. The Iranian pilots never saw what hit them. 2 F-4 Phantom jets exploded on the runway at Tabriz Airport before they could even start their engines. The Americans were shooting at planes that had not taken off yet. It was a level of awareness and precision that Iranian commanders had never experienced. Operation Epic Fury was unlike anything the American military had done in decades. The plan was simple but massive. Strike everything at once. Give Iran no time to respond. Destroy their ability to fight back before they even understood what was happening. The United States had spent 15 years perfecting this kind of warfare in Iraq and Afghanistan. Now they would use every lesson learned against a much bigger target. The technology advantage was overwhelming. American B-2 stealth bombers were completely invisible to Iranian radar. The planes had been designed in the 1980s specifically to penetrate Soviet air defenses. Iranian systems were based on older Soviet and Russian technology. They could not see what was coming. By the time air raid sirens went off, the bombs were already in the air. There was nothing Iran could do to stop them. The United States deployed 200 aircraft in the first wave. B-2 bombers carried the bunker busters for deep underground targets. B-1 bombers carried cruise missiles that could be launched from hundreds of miles away. B-52 bombers, planes that had been flying since the 1950s, dropped regular bombs on surface targets. F-22 and F-35 stealth fighters flew ahead to shoot down any Iranian planes that tried to take off. F-18 fighters launched from aircraft carriers in the Gulf. Every plane had a specific target. Every pilot knew exactly what they were supposed to hit. Israel joined the attack with Operation Roaring Lion. 200 Israeli fighter jets struck targets in western Iran. They focused on missile production facilities and nuclear research sites. The Israelis had been planning this attack for years. They had flown practice missions. They had studied Iranian defenses. When the moment came, they executed perfectly. Israeli F-35 stealth fighters led the way. Behind them came waves of F-16 and F-15 carrying precision-guided bombs. In the first 24 hours, American and Israeli forces struck over 1,000 targets. Command and control centers exploded. Missile launch sites were destroyed. Air defense radars went dark. Communications towers collapsed. The Iranian military suddenly could not see what was happening. Commanders could not talk to their troops. Units did not know if they should fight, or hide, or run. The naval campaign was even more devastating. The United States had announced that destroying Iran's navy was a top priority. Iran had two naval forces. The regular Iranian Navy operated bigger ships and submarines. The Revolutionary Guard Navy used small, fast attack boats and operated in the Persian Gulf. The Americans targeted both. The Irish Shahid Bagheri was Iran's pride. It was their first aircraft carrier for drones. The ship had only entered service in February 2025, just 1 year before Operation Epic Fury began. Engineers had spent 2 years converting a container ship into a floating drone base. It could launch Shahid drones and helicopters. Iranian planners believed it would let them strike targets far out to sea. The Shahid Bagheri was docked at Bandar Abbas Naval Base when the attack started. American bombs hit it in the first hours. The ship exploded and sank at its berth. Iran's newest weapon was gone before it ever saw combat. The Iris Macron was another converted ship. Originally a Japanese oil tanker, it had been turned into a forward base for special operations. The Macron could support helicopters and carry commandos for secret missions. It was also at Bandar Abbas. It was also hit in the opening strikes. Satellite images showed the ship burning and listing to one side. The Iris Dina was one of Iran's newer frigates. It had been commissioned in 2021. The ship had just participated in an international naval exercise in India called Milan 2026. The Dina was sailing home when Operation Epic Fury began. The crew probably thought they were safe in the Indian Ocean, far from the fighting. They were wrong. On March 4th, an American submarine fired a torpedo. The Dina was hit below the waterline. Water rushed into the engine room. The ship sank within minutes. Out of 180 sailors on board, only 32 were rescued. 101 were listed as missing. The submarine disappeared back into the deep water without ever being seen. Iranian naval commanders watched from their headquarters as reports came in. The Shahid Bagheri was gone. The Macron was burning. Ships across the Persian Gulf were under attack. They grabbed their secure phones and called fleet commanders. The lines were dead. They tried backup communications, also dead. American strikes had taken out the communications network in the first minutes. Naval officers looked at the video feeds from Bandar Abbas Naval Base. They could see fires spreading across the docks. They could see ships sinking. They had spent years building this fleet. They had believed the small, fast boats could swarm American destroyers the way they worked against Iraqi vessels. But the Americans were not getting close enough to swarm. They were launching missiles from beyond the horizon. Iranian boats could not even see the enemy, let alone attack them. For Iranian naval commanders watching their fleet disappear, the realization was brutal. Iran's navy was not fighting the Americans. Iran's navy was being exterminated from distances their weapons could not reach. In the first 10 days, American forces destroyed over 50 Iranian naval vessels. Some reports say the number was closer to 90 ships when smaller patrol boats and mine layers were counted. Iran's ability to threaten shipping in the Persian Gulf was eliminated. The navy that Iran had built over decades was at the bottom of the sea. The missile campaign was just as intense. Iran had thousands of ballistic missiles hidden in tunnels and bunkers across the country. These missiles were Iran's main weapon. They could reach Israel. They could reach American bases in the Gulf. They could close the Strait of Hormuz. Destroying the missiles was critical. American intelligence had been tracking missile sites for years. When the attack came, B-2 bombers struck the hardened facilities first. They used bunker-buster bombs to collapse the tunnels. Then other aircraft came in to destroy the launch vehicles and support equipment. The Kojir missile complex east of Tehran was one of the biggest targets. Satellite images after the strikes showed collapsed tunnel entrances and huge smoke plumes. The Tabriz military base in northwestern Iran was hit so hard that entire hillsides collapsed. Missile production facilities in Isfahan exploded in massive fireballs. In 72 hours, Iran lost an estimated 80 to 90% of its missile launch capacity. Iran tried to fight back. The Revolutionary Guard launched Operation True Promise 4. They fired hundreds of missiles and drones at Israel and at American bases across the Middle East. Missiles hit targets in Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, and the United Arab Emirates. One ballistic missile struck Tel Aviv in Israel, killing civilians. Iranian drones attacked the American consulate in Dubai, setting it on fire. But most of the Iranian missiles were intercepted. American Patriot and THAAD missile defense systems shot them down. Israeli Iron Dome batteries worked overtime. The UAE reported a 90% interception rate. The problem for Iran was that every time they launched missiles, they revealed their positions. American satellites and drones tracked the launches. Within minutes, American aircraft would strike back. Iran was running out of missiles faster than they could shoot them. By the end of the first week, they had switched to mostly using drones because they had so few missiles left. Iranian commanders watching their forces try to fight back faced a grim reality. When they launched missiles at American bases, they could see on their screens how few made it through. American Patriot batteries intercepted missile after missile with mechanical precision. The few that got through hit targets, yes, but the damage was minimal compared to what American forces were doing to Iran. Iranian commanders ordered their remaining aircraft to take off and attack. Most never made it off the ground. American satellites detected the moment engines started. By the time Iranian pilots taxied to the runway, American missiles were already in the air. Those few planes that did take off were shot down within minutes by F-22 fighters they never saw coming. Every Iranian counterattack revealed more positions. Every revealed position was destroyed within the hour. Iranian military officers realized they were not fighting a war. They were being systematically hunted and eliminated by an enemy that could see them, but could not be seen in return. On March 1st, President Trump posted on Truth Social again. He said American forces had sunk 9 Iranian warships and destroyed Iran's naval headquarters. He said the operation would continue until Iran's ability to threaten America was completely eliminated. There was no talk of stopping, no mention of negotiations, just a promise of more strikes to come. The numbers from the first 10 days told a devastating story. Over 5,000 targets struck, 50 to 90 Iranian naval vessels destroyed, depending on which count you believed. Hundreds of missile launchers eliminated. Iran's supreme leader dead. The defense minister dead. The Revolutionary Guard commander, dead. Multiple other senior officials, dead. 6 American service members killed in Iranian retaliatory strikes. Over 200 Iranian civilians killed, according to the Red Crescent Relief Organization. And the fighting was still going on. Iranian state television confirmed Khamenei's death on March 1st, 3 days after the strike. The announcement came after Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had already told the world. Iran declared 40 days of national mourning. They announced 7 days of public holiday. But behind the scenes, Iranian leaders faced a crisis. Khamenei had ruled for 37 years. He made all the major decisions. Now he was gone, and nobody knew who was really in charge. An interim leadership council formed immediately. It included a member of the Assembly of Experts, the current president, and the Chief Justice. But everyone knew the real power was with the Revolutionary Guard. They still controlled the remaining military forces. They controlled the internal security apparatus. They controlled the economy through businesses and front companies. The Revolutionary Guard commanders wanted a new supreme leader chosen quickly. They needed someone to make decisions. They needed someone to tell them what to do next. The Iranian military command structure had effectively ceased to exist. The strike that killed Khamenei had also eliminated most of Iran's senior military leadership in a single blow. The defense minister was dead. The Revolutionary Guard commander was dead. The heads of the Navy, Air Force, and missile forces were dead. The officers who survived were junior commanders who had never planned for this scenario. They had never trained to run a war without the central command telling them what to do. Communication networks were destroyed. Secure phone lines were cut. Even basic radio communication was unreliable because American electronic warfare systems were jamming frequencies across the country. Iranian military units were isolated, unable to coordinate with each other, receiving contradictory orders from different surviving officers, and watching American strikes continue day after day with no end in sight. The military machine that Iran had built over 47 years had been decapitated, and the body did not know how to function without the head. On March 8th, the Assembly of Experts appointed Mojtaba Khamenei as the new supreme leader. He was the son of the man who had just been killed. He was 55 years old. Many Iranians had expected him to eventually succeed his father, but not like this. Not after his father was killed by American bombs. Not during a war that Iran was clearly losing. The surviving Iranian military commanders held emergency meetings in hidden locations. Many senior officers were dead, killed in the bunker with Khamenei. But lower-ranking officers were still alive, trying to understand what had happened. According to military analysts studying the conflict, Iranian commanders had prepared to fight the American military they remembered from the 1980s. They had prepared for the Americans who retreated from Beirut. They had prepared for limited strikes and political pressure. What they saw instead was something completely different. The Americans who attacked on February 28th did not fight the way Iran expected. There were no ground troops to ambush. There were no ships close enough to hit with missiles. There were no planes flying low enough for anti-aircraft guns to reach. The entire war was being fought from distances where Iran could not respond. Based on analysis of Iranian military doctrine and the battle's outcome, it became clear that Iranian forces faced an impossible tactical situation. They could see the effects of American strikes, but could not strike back. That was what Iranian commanders learned when they first saw American air power in 2026. Iranian military planners had studied American operations for decades. They had watched Desert Storm in 1991. They had analyzed the 2003 invasion of Iraq. They believed they understood how America fought. But those wars had been fought against Saddam Hussein's military using 1980s Soviet equipment and outdated tactics. Iran had convinced itself it was different. They had newer Russian air defenses. They had hardened bunkers. They had practiced dispersing forces and hiding in tunnels. Iranian commanders believed these preparations would force America into a grinding war of attrition that would last months or years. Instead, the war was essentially over in 72 hours. The technology gap was not 10 years or 20 years. It was generational. And no amount of courage or clever tactics could bridge that gap when the enemy could see everything, hit anything, and remain invisible while doing it. 6 American service members were killed in Iranian retaliatory strikes. 18 others were wounded. But one thing is clear from what we know so far. Iranian commanders spent decades preparing to fight the Americans. They built bunkers. They bought air defenses. They trained their troops. They believed they were ready. Then, on February 28, 2026, they saw what American air power actually looks like when fully unleashed. They saw stealth bombers they could not track. They saw missiles fired from ships they could not see. They saw their supreme leader killed in a bunker they believed was impenetrable. They saw their navy destroyed before it could fight back. And in those first 72 hours, every assumption they had made about modern warfare was proven catastrophically wrong. The story of Operation Epic Fury is still being written, but the story of what Iranian commanders saw when American air power arrived has already been told. They saw the future of warfare, and they learned they were not prepared for it.